A new era at Barclays, but is it a real makeover or a mere paint job? Whatever it is, investors seem to like it. Shares up as much as 5% today to a new two-year high. So, cutting back investment banking in Asia, closing down some structured finance operations and 3,700 jobs to go. New Chief Executive Anthony Jenkins unveiled his new strategy today.
When you build an organisation to achieve a more complex objective, in other words, doing business in the right way as well as doing good business, you end up building a much more capable organisation. And so what's going to happen is, I believe, we will be more competitive over time and more investable because of that.
Let's get out now to Michael Hewson. He's market analyst at CMC Markets. Well, Michael, investors seem to think this is a makeover as opposed to a mere paint job.
Yeah, it certainly sounds good, Jamie, and I think there's certainly potential for the share price to move back to the highs that we saw in 2011, around about the 340 pence level. But, you know, is a lot of this already priced in? I think a lot of this was sort of front run by the markets, and while we may be seeing a bit of a positive uplift in sentiment, I think my key concern is, where's the key profits growth going to come going forward? And Mr. Jenkins was at pains to really sort of gloss over that fact, and given the fact that 37% of their investment banking profits or their overall profits comes from investment banking, my concern is, you know, where will that future profit growth come from going forward? And he talks about credibility as well. Well, there's still quite a bit of reputational risk surrounding the mis-selling of small business interest rate swaps. And I think if they really want to draw a line under that, they really need to nip that in the bud.
OK, you talk about 340 going an upside. What about the downside? Are we, you know, is 300 is obviously a big, nice, round number.
It is. I think just below that, we've seen a significant rally in the share price since the lows last year, around about 150p. If you draw a line through the lows, that comes in around about the 290p level. And I think as long as we stay above that, then I certainly think the upside momentum should be maintained. However, if we do drop below that, then we could see a bit of a sell-off towards the 250p area.
OK, let's get on to a subject I know much closer to your heart, Michael, and that's foreign exchange. Today we had a G7 statement on FX. The usual stuff, but it does seem to give a green light to Japan to continue to pursue its essentially weaker yen policies.
Yeah, absolutely, and I certainly think that, you know, I don't think there were any surprises from that G7 statement. It's pretty much as you were. I think the bigger factor was those comments from the US Treasury official last night, Brainerd, who basically, you know, underlined that they were quite happy with Japan to pursue their current policy of trying to address deflation. And to be quite honest, I don't think they really could say anything else, given the fact that the Fed have been pursuing a very weak dollar policy for the past 5 years.
OK, you mentioned the Fed, the US policy, Japan policy. I spoke to Jean-Claude Trichet yesterday, obviously ex-ECB president. He was pretty scathing on both US and Japanese policy. Here's what he had to say.
I would urge that, you know, this growing consensus of economists on the other side of the Atlantic and on the other side of the Pacific would be more balanced, more nuanced.
That may be true.
Otherwise, every country goes in a direction which is a recipe, again, for very, very poor behavior for the global economy as a whole.
Well then, Michael, blaming Japan and the States for their policies, in that environment, the euro would probably be headed higher, even higher still.
Yeah, I certainly think that is the case. I mean, obviously the European Central Bank is much more hawkish in terms of monetary policy than the previous two that we've just mentioned. So I certainly think there's potential for more upside, certainly in euro yen, if we take out the March 2010 highs at 128. And obviously dollar yen, a key level, is around about the 95 area. I would be a little bit concerned about a bit of a pullback in euro yen and dollar yen in the very, very short term. We've got the Bank of Japan policy meeting on Thursday morning, and I certainly think there's going to be a certain element of front running that announcement. Obviously, we also have the G20, so I certainly don't think the Bank of Japan will be going all in at this particular meeting, given the fact that we've got the G20 on Friday. So I certainly think that there's potential for further yen losses towards 99.80 in the short to medium term over maybe the next 6 months. But in the short term, I would be very concerned about going overly long of dollars and overly long of euros near the current highs.
OK, Michael, thanks very much. That was Michael Hewson at CMC Markets. Well, the Italian business world has been shaken by yet another scandal ahead of the Italian elections, this time involving Finmeccanica. A source close to the matter said the head of the Italian state-controlled defence group was arrested for allegedly paying bribes to the Indian government to secure the sale of 12 helicopters. Shares in Finmeccanica down today more than 8%. And that's where we leave it today, but do join us every weekday at 12 GMT for the latest market insights on Market Pulse. I'm Jamie McGeever. This is Reuters.